Hi, and welcome to Speaking of Spirits. This is Colleen O'Hara with Pocatello Paranormal Research. And joining me on tonight's broadcast is Tim.
Well, hello. I am Tim.
And we have the local team here in Pocatello called Pocatello Paranormal Research. This is our third podcast, and I wanted to thank everybody who's been listening to our podcasts. We've kind of hit a milestone with the downloads on the last podcast. So tonight we're going to discuss local hauntings, local places we've investigated. We have a lot of buildings in this area that we've investigated or would like to investigate. So we're going to kick it off tonight and talk about one of our favorite spots, and that's the Enders Hotel in Soda Springs, Idaho. And we've investigated the Enders Hotel twice now. And I find that hotel to be one of the most paranormally active places around. It has just about every kind of haunt that you can think of in that building. And all 3 floors are very active. Well, actually, I guess 4 floors if you think about the basement. It's never fails to produce results. Any time that you walk through the door, you're going to experience something in the hotel.
Well, what were your thoughts the first time you walked through that door?
Well, I'd been in there many, many times. When I go through that area for work, I would stop in there and eat. And occasionally I've walked up to through the hotel to the 2nd and 3rd floor and just kind of look around because they had it set up kind of as a museum. In part of the hotel, and it was fascinating. Feel like the hair on the back of your neck could go up in certain places. You'd feel tingling sensations, heaviness in some rooms. Definitely the feeling of being watched in a few areas. Just about every experience that you can think of, that's an experience that comes along with investigating a paranormal building, you will have in that building. And we've heard from a lot of different people who have either worked there or have been guests there. It's a very, very active building.
I used to work for Food Service of America, and of course, my attention was always on the food that I was delivering to that place. But when I was there, I really didn't feel anything. So I was, again, focused on my job, so I wasn't really open to anything. That's why I was so surprised when you said there was so much activity and the things that we caught on camera that I was surprised to see. So I am pretty surprised by the end. I was fairly surprised by the Enders thing. That's why I mentioned when you first walk in. Do you think that you have to be open and looking at the Enders place, or do you think it's always on?
I didn't know much about the hotel the first time I walked in the door. It was just it was a place to eat, and I had lunch there. So I really didn't have any, preconceived notions about the hotel. I had heard some rumors, but I hear rumors about a lot of different places. For me, I can sense things pretty quickly when I walk through a door. So for me, the building turned itself on immediately. Yeah. I don't know if that's because I've been in this field for so long that I'm hoping that that's what happens when I walk through a door, or if, or if maybe there's some preconceived notions from what people have told me. I don't know. But we did catch some really amazing evidence in that hotel on our first investigation. And our second investigation, it was even better. Of course, the first investigation, when we walked in the door, we had the mayor of Soda Springs and a city council member and a few other people from the community that were going to work and stay with us. If people are hearing the noise in the background, remember we're all teleworking right now. So there's kids in the background at Tim's house.
Yes, sorry.
It's okay.
And one of them's amped up. He's getting his tonsils out tomorrow.
Uh-oh. Oh no,
Yeah.
little dude.
Poor guy.
So anyway, getting back to the hotel, we had several members of the community who worked with us that night. And almost immediately when we started setting up the equipment started hitting. The K2 meter was hitting. The EMF meter was hitting. Everything was going off. The static detector, it was active, super active from the moment we walked in the door. We did stay the night in the hotel that night, and people had experiences in their rooms at night, to the point where they left very early in the morning. I wasn't aware they left. I was on the third floor with the rest of the team, and I didn't know that they'd left. In the morning, we kind of reconvened. I guess it was about 6:30 in the morning downstairs, and the mayor had told us, "Did you know that all the ladies left because things had happened to them in their room?" So it was kind of a wild night, and that was the very first time we got 3 human shape apparitions with our thermal camera, and that was in the basement of the Enders Hotel.
Yeah, I remember that shot.
Yeah. So great hotel. It is open again. It was closed for quite a while. It is open again. I would recommend, if you're in the area of Soda Springs, go have lunch, book a room. We're waiting on the mayor to give us the nod to release the second video. The second video for the Enders, we worked with the police chief and his wife that night, and we had a wild night. The police chief pretty interrogated the bad guy. Well, I would say the bad guy. I mean, the guy who we believe caused some of the negative hauntings in the hotel. The police chief interrogated him, and when he started interrogating him, the equipment started going nuts. So, yeah, we're waiting to get the nod to release that video to the public. But a great place. How about you?
I'm sure everybody's excited to see it.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in Soda Springs. Every time I go through there, they're like, "Hey, we see the video." But Tim, when you think of local haunts, what comes to mind for you?
Well, a lot of mine were experiences when I was young at different places. I think I mentioned before in the podcast the Stanrod House. And whenever I think of a haunting, I think of that because it was my first experience. I was really, really young. Well, really young, probably 9. And it was back when the Stanrod House was still a museum. So there was I forget what they call it, caretakers, I guess, a little family that lived there. And they had a baby. And the baby was asleep, and they needed to run to the store. And they asked me just to sit in the Stanrod House to make sure the baby was okay. And I said, well, sure, because I really loved that house. And I was sitting it was in the corner, and it was a red velvet chair just in the corner. And I sat down, and I was enjoying myself. And the Stanrod House has hardwood floors. And when hardwood floors are walked on, they make it's walking boot noise on hardwood floor.
Yeah.
And I had that walking noise all the way from the door to the tip of my chair. And it was a conundrum because I would have liked to run away. But I was in charge of the baby. So I sat there, and as soon as they got home, I was out of there.
Was that your first paranormal experience, Tim, that you remember?
Yep.
Wow.
The first one that I recall. And I lived, it's now the Shady Lady in Pocatello. It's a lamp store. So I lived in that house. And so the parking lot in that alleyway is where I rode bikes and grew up. And whenever I have an association with, I don't know, that spider feeling, if you will, spiders crawling all over you, I immediately think of the Stanrod House very first.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, if I recall, when I was in the Shady Lady the last time, they said that they own the Stanrod House.
They just sold it.
And they just sold it, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they they bought the Shady Lady and then the Stanrod House, and I kick myself. There was a small chance that I could have bought it, and I should have, but I didn't.
You should have. Think of the paranormal experiences we could have had there and the experiments we could have set up. Yeah,
I know, my fault.
If the new owner of the Stanrod House happens to listen to our podcast, please give us a call. We're on Facebook. Our phone number is out there. Give us a call so we can get into that house. Absolutely.
Well,
yeah, and it's a beautiful architecture.
And she's the new owner is doing a whole lot of stuff to it. They're putting a new roof and making it really nice again.
Nice.
So if there's ever a time, it would be now.
You bet. You bet. While things are going to be kind of amped up if they're working on it.
Yep.
So one of the other places that we investigated in was last summer was Tough Guy Lanes.
Yes.
Now, that was an interesting investigation.
I loved it. That was actually the first one I went on with you.
That's true. That's true. You know, so we had some guest investigators that night with us. We had a newspaper reporter with us. We had we did a local contest, and we had a couple of people join us for the investigation. We had a gentleman working with us who works with the team out of Arizona a lot. And it was an interesting investigation because the gentleman from Arizona, he introduced us to some new equipment that he uses, and that was kind of fascinating. But what I thought was really wild was I had a group of, I think I had the newspaper reporter and like 5 ladies in this group, and we were right outside the bar, and we were just trying to unpack the equipment and talk through some of the equipment and describe what the equipment was. When one piece of equipment, and I think it was a K2 meter, there's a shelf behind the lanes. There's a shelf, and I guess you could set your drinks there or whatnot. And the K2 meter went flying off the shelf and into a trash can. And of course, we didn't have our equipment set up, so none of our equipment caught that wonderful thing. I was just like, oh, are you kidding me? You can't do this in 30 minutes when we have a camera down this. So,
well, we caught a lot of good stuff there. Anybody listening, we have it posted on YouTube, and we caught some amazing things. My favorite thing that happened there, we were reviewing some tape, just kind of in the moment there, and we were next to the table with the TVs, and I can't remember her name, but it was one of the guest investigators. She was standing there, and she said she thought she felt something. And so we were watching, and she kind of had her hand out, and all we saw was her freak out and take off. But when we reviewed the camera, we had the camera right on her. And you see this thing that's fairly large go all the way down and through her hand, and it gets smaller and smaller until it disappears at the bottom. And so it is extremely hard for me to debunk that one. You can't say a bug will just disappear, and it's all right there in frame. I think it's
she even shook her hand. She shook her hand when she jumped back and ran back.
She took her hand right when it got to her hand. She shook it and took it back, and that's when you saw it go smaller and disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. That was one of my favorite pieces of evidence so far, anyway.
Yeah, that was a good one. I enjoyed that investigation, and Tough Guy Lanes, we'd come in anytime you want us back. We're willing, and we have even more equipment now, and we're always buying more stuff. So we would love for you to set us back up with that.
Yeah, the basement was pretty cool there too. And I can't remember the name we got. I thought I remembered earlier, but he seemed to be really active in the basement, and I thought we found out it was one of the former owners.
Honestly, I don't remember. We caught so much stuff in that building, though. It was pretty active, And we had a pretty good growl in there too. Remember the growl? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely anybody listening, go watch it on YouTube. It's pretty cool.
yeah. Watch that video. Let us know. Give us a comment. I like the video. It came out pretty good. One of the ones that we did. So I've been investigating the paranormal pretty much all my life. And seriously for about 23 years now. But it made this team right after I moved here. I worked with another team and didn't like what I was seeing and decided to make this team here. And so one of the first investigations that we had after Pocatello Paranormal became a team was the Veterans Memorial Building. And I've actually been in there 3 times doing an investigation. Twice on our own, and one time with a film crew from Utah that came in. And that place, talking to the different people that go in there frequently, right? A lot of different veterans and cleaning staff and people like that. The building is very active. And when you walk into the main floor from the back towards the river, is a dining room and a bar and a kitchen area. And they have a lot of different social events there, and pancake breakfasts and steak night and stuff like that. Well, there used to be a lot of pool tables set up in that area, and they have since been taken away. It's just tables and chairs, like long tables and chairs. And we caught a pool game on our audio in that area that I thought was really cool. Yeah. And in 2 different investigations, we asked how many spirits inhabit the building, and twice they said 87.
Wow.
And that was pretty cool. Now you got to remember that upstairs there's different sitting rooms, and the dance floor area, there's a lot of memorabilia and a lot of uniforms and flags from different wars, and there's an attachment. Veterans have an attachment to their stuff that's on display in there. And it doesn't surprise me that a veteran would be very attached to maybe the sword he wore, or maybe the rifle that she had in a. So all of this stuff is out in the building for display. So it doesn't surprise me that people are staying with their items. So the Veterans Memorial Building is definitely high on my list as one of our local haunts. Beautiful building.
I'm embarrassed to say I've never been in there.
Oh, well, it's worth a shot. They do community steak events and different community breakfasts and stuff like that. It's worth going through there and seeing the building. It's very well maintained, very well. Another one that we did kind of soon after we became a team was Portland Valley Brewery, or Portland Valley Brewing. And that place had an interesting past. So Penny, a lady named Penny used to own this building a long time, for quite a number of years. And when she renovated it to make it the brewery and restaurant, she told me prior to the investigation, she said we had numerous contractors that were working in there to renovate it who would leave their tools and call her and say, we're not going back. Because whatever was in there had frightened them so badly, they wouldn't come back. And she said being downstairs, so there's 3 stories to it. There's a basement, there's the main floor with the bar, and then there's the upstairs where they have music and bar set up in a bathroom. And she said that she would be on the main floor and she could hear what sounded like oak barrels being rolled in the upstairs. But she'd go up there and nothing would be there. It would just be whatever, tables and chairs and the dance floor. That there would be nothing to suggest there was oak barrels. She did some research on the building and she said years and years and years ago, it used to be a bar. So maybe it was the oak barrels from the whiskey and the things like that they had stored in wine. And so that was kind of interesting. We had a newspaper reporter with us on that investigation. The main floor was not active for us at all during that investigation. The basement had some activity, but when we got up to that second floor, it lit up like a Christmas tree, and we had all kinds of stuff going on up there. We caught shadows on the brick wall. The camera was at a position where when the shadow occurred on the brick of a human, the camera's tripod was set up all the way against the wall, so there was nothing that could have been behind it to cast illumination from behind the camera to cast a shadow of one of us walking. And then we could catch the cameras in each other's field of vision to rule out the fact that it wasn't one of us. It was a shadow. It was definitely a shadow. One portion of the team was doing a flashlight in a EVP session. And when they asked for the flashlight to turn on, not only did it turn on, the table started moving a little bit and the flashlight rolled. And not once, but twice did that happen. But the main thing that happened during that investigation was the bathroom. We had a young lady who was a member of the team at that time, and she was a really strong medium. She had gone into the bathroom to use the facilities, and it's like two doors to get into where the stall is. There's the main door that goes into where a mirror would be in a counter, and then there's the bathroom section. You go through another door, and there's the toilet. She got locked in there, and then she was being physically hurt in there. Whatever was in there with her was scratching her, pinching her. I mean, it was going nuts, and she couldn't get the door open. She could not get that door open, and it's like a hook, with an eyelet that's the kind of lock. It wasn't a fancy lock. That it's unlocked, the door would not open. So at that time, we had a Marine on our team, and boy, did he turn into a Marine. He went barging through that door, and he grabbed that door. I thought it was going to come right off its hinge. And he went in there to rescue her. And then he sat in there and he said, "Bring it on. You think you're so big and tough? You think you're going to hurt somebody? You hurt me." And when he started yelling at whatever entity was in that bathroom, there was about the whole team. There must have been 11 of us at night on the outside of the first door watching this action, right? Phil's in where the stall is. And he's yelling and screaming at this thing. And I'm standing next to this newspaper reporter, and there's a table in between us, a small table. And I'm watching the reporter's hand to make sure he's not moving this table, because the table between us is moving. But he's not touching the table. And the table is starting to kind of slide around a little bit. And he looks at me, and I looked at him, and I looked down to make sure his hand's not on it. And he looked at me, watching him, and he's like, "I'm not touching it." Well, when this thing came out of the bathroom, it came out of the bathroom with such force that when it came through us, it kind of blew us all backwards, a little bit. And all of us became immediately ill. Everybody was sick to their stomach. I mean, it was immediate. And the reporter left, and I didn't hear from him for 2 years. 2 years before he called me back. And I felt so bad because I could have talked him through that, but he said it put him into a real state of depression to the point where he couldn't write for a couple of years. And I wish he would have contacted us, because I think we could have helped him analyze what happened and talk him through that. But it did affect every single one of us as it came through us all. And then the building went quiet, and it was done for the night. And so, but it was interesting.
I was amazed when I first heard this story, because I think it was probably 4 years ago now. My wife's a school teacher, and they had a faculty Christmas party on the second level. of the Port
Oh, yeah.
Valley Brewery. And the table we were at was right next to the bathrooms. And I was just sitting there. And usually I'm not the most exuberant person in the entire world. But usually I follow along in conversations and politely reply. And I was in a mood up there. It was bad. And
Interesting.
Whilst I was sitting there, we were sitting at a table and my glass moved. And I was the only one at the table. It was an interesting time. And so when I first heard the story that you just told us, I thought back to the Port Valley Brewery then, and it's amazing how many synchronicities there were to my experience with the Port Valley Brewery. And I wasn't investigating. I was just there partaking. Right.
Well, that's interesting. So people listening to this, I hope that you go in there and you, head upstairs and have a drink and order some food and sit there and see what you feel. The upstairs is definitely the most haunted portion of the building. Definitely. Yeah.
I agree. But all of those buildings on, I think it's First Street, it's amazing when you walk in, the different personalities that the buildings have.
Yeah.
I was looking across the street at maybe there's a big warehouse there. And I've always thought it was a beautiful building, and it was up for sale this last year. And so I called to go look at it to see if it was something I could do, and it needed more work than I could give it. But when I was looking, it was amazing because it was two different buildings. There was kind of the warehouse section, and then a big building with like 4 levels. Mm-hmm. And you could totally feel the difference of the personality of the warehouse to the old 4-level building. It's
interesting.
I think any of those buildings on First Street would be pretty good.
Well, I went through, when I first moved here, I think the easiest way to find the history of a town, so I moved here almost 11 years ago, was to start reading the microfiche in the library and looking for different things. Back in the day, they had fenced that area off, and it was actually called Fence City, that portion of First Street for several blocks. I think it was First and Second. They fenced it off to keep the good people of Pocatello from wandering into the unsavory neighborhood of brothels and gambling, and they actually did public hangings on First Street. Mm-hmm. Basically right across from Port Valley Brewery.
Yeah, that building. Yes, that's one of the reasons I wanted to go in.
Yes. So that's where they did a lot of the public hangings. I don't know if they moved it around, but from the microfiche that I read, the public hangings were pretty much right there at that location. So, an interesting place. Now, my friends owned the warehouse on the corner, and they had renovated it, and there was their home. It was beautiful inside. And I'm willing to bet that they had their share of activity in that place. So yes. I know I have been in there a couple of times before they sold it, and there was definitely some stuff going on in there. So another one of my favorite places, and I've talked about it frequently, and it's not local to Pocatello, but it's over by Twin Falls, Kimberly area, and it's called the Stricker Ranch. And the Stricker Ranch is owned by the state. And the state asked, at the time we had both teams, Magic Valley Paranormal and Pocatello Paranormal Research. And we came together for kind of a publicity thing for the Stricker Ranch. The Stricker Ranch on Halloween every year does kind of a spooky thing out there. It isn't a spooky setting. It sits all by itself out in the farmland, and it's a beautiful place. And there used to be, it was a stagecoach stop, They had a general store. They had the livery stable. There's a cemetery out there. There might have been a few other portions to the ranch that I don't remember, but those are what comes to mind. So they invited us in. It was like June or July to do the investigation so that we had enough time to get the review done and get the video done for Halloween. And for 2 weekends, we went out there Friday night and Saturday night to do the Halloween event with them. That investigation, to me, was one of the best in that we had a historian work with us that night, and she was a historian that worked at the Stricker Ranch. So she knew the family history. She knew the family dynamics of the Stricker family. She knew all of the like the personal things. They had the diaries of the Stricker family, and she'd read them many times. So she knew their personalities and who these people were. So we were up in one of the Stricker family's bedrooms, and he was kind of the black sheep of the Stricker family. And he had run away, and he was, he was kind of the bad boy of the Strickers. And we started doing an EVP session with him. Now, we had a camera system upstairs. We had the camera system downstairs. We had one investigator watching the camera system downstairs, one investigator watching the camera system upstairs. And then there was 3 of us sitting in the bedroom talking. And we were doing this EVP session. And I had asked the historian to, because the flashlight was being so interactive, we really thought we had Clyde Stricker with us. We really thought he was, so I wanted to trip him up. I mean, is this really Clyde? Because he was really hitting on everything that it seemed like it was Clyde. So when she was trying to trick him, he wasn't responding. So when she'd come back around and circle back around and ask something about Clyde, he'd respond. I'm watching the flashlight, and the batteries are going dead, and I don't want to stop this interaction. And I didn't have another flashlight to do this with at the time. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because he is so responsive. I don't want to stop this. And I'm watching the batteries go, and the flashlight's getting dimmer and dimmer, and then it went out. And doing investigations, we walk in the door with fresh batteries, and if you're getting a lot of activity, your batteries are dead instantly. And so I'm sitting there going, oh man, I don't want to lose Clyde. He's been with us for like 30 minutes talking to us. It's been fascinating. And all of a sudden we hear something like the flashlight won't go on, or the flashlight won't turn on. And all of us heard it. And I went, Jerry, who was investigating with us that night, he goes, I'm like, did you hear that? He goes, yes, I did. And downstairs, the investigator, Bob, he heard it. I said, Bob, was that you? He goes, no, I thought it was you guys. So we caught this disembodied voice of Clyde being frustrated because he couldn't work the flashlight anymore. It was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating.
That's fantastic.
We caught it on like 4 different recorders that night. It was amazing. But there was so much other stuff that happened. On the recorders, when we started listening to him after the investigation, it sounded like there's this gorgeous dining room, with the real high wood paneling and glass. It was just absolutely really ornate and beautiful. It sounded like it was being dismantled. Like somebody had a crowbar down there and just beating the heck out of the furniture. But when we were there, nothing. We heard nothing. You could have heard a pin drop in there. Lots of whispering happening, lots of voices, disembodied voices. We caught everything imaginable in there. It was really a fascinating place. So I highly recommend it. It is open to the public. It's worth paying a couple of dollars to go through it because your dollars go to maintain the site. Very, very active place. You don't have to go to Halloween to go in there and have an experience. And they did set up, during the Halloween thing, they set up some tricks to kind of give the public, because the public are expecting to be scared, right? So they had like people under tables and whatnot that would make things move. So I was stationed in the this dining room, this big ornate dining room, and you couldn't have candles in there. So we had like the little, they're like tea candles, but they're batteries. And we had them set up so that we had a lift light in there. All on this paneling, there was a ledge, and we had probably 30 of those candles set up in there. And the very last group that came through on the very last night, we were sitting there talking, and I talked a little bit about some of the events, and we had prepped them with the video before they came in. And all of a sudden, one of the tea lights went zip, and it flew off the ledge. And this lady started laughing. She goes, "Oh, that was pretty good. You got me." And I went, "That wasn't a gimmick." I said, "There's no fishing line on those things." So that was a pretty good way to end the night.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure she thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm sure she did. One of the places we just did, and one of the is Rumors Pub. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because you had quite a lot of experiences yourself in there that night and what you were feeling. And your business was right next door to it, right?
Yeah, I owned and operated the Sears hometown in Pocatello for a little while, and it was right next to it, literally kind of part of it. So the way that my store was set up, we kind of had appliances, and then in a completely different section of the building, we had tools and lawnmowers, lawn equipment. And the main section with the appliances, nothing. It was just a building. But the section that had the tools and the lawnmowers, crazy things happened, at least weekly. And so I was very familiar with the feeling of that individual, and he was definitely over there in the rumors section too. And I have my own thoughts about who it is. I feel that he was part of the person who owned the printer press that was there when the building was first there. And it was kind of his baby putting it together. And he would always mess with paper. Always. We had the prices that were paper, and they would be completely pulled out. We had cardboard that was secured, and that would always be pulled out. We had oil in little containers, and to me, it kind of looked like the toner, if you will, and those were always knocked over. So when we went to investigate the rumors portion, I kind of sat in the corner where the stage is for the performances. And it was kind of cool because whenever I was over there, I was working, and I very rarely had time to sit down. And so when I sat down over on the stage, it was almost like I could hear whispering, and more than once I had a sensation of someone flicking my ear. And it was the same kind of feeling of the person that was in the other side, and it was just kind of a cool experience. I really enjoyed the rumors area. I really thought that we were going to get a whole lot more evidence than we got from there, honestly. I don't know if it was just kind of like a personal experience I had there, because I kind of had the blood, sweat, and tears invested in the building. But we did get some really good ones. I remember the ashtray.
Yeah.
There was a lady sitting at the counter, and she had used the ashtray, but she had turned around and we were all talking, and the ashtray completely slid off the bar top and fell on the ground. That was probably one of the cooler experiences that I had at Rumors anyway.
Yeah.
I think you were a little closer, though. Maybe saw a little bit more. Yeah,
it definitely came off the bar on its own. Unfortunately, when I went back to try to put that into our video, there wasn't a clear enough shot for me to show to public that it wasn't a gimmick or that she didn't hit it with her hand. We did catch a mist behind the bar up by the TV, kind of like form and then go away. And so we're definitely invited to go back to Rumors anytime we want to see if we can catch something again. And what we might do this time is go in on an evening where they're having a really quiet evening, and they'll just close the bar early so we can go in there and kind of roll through most of the evening. But yeah, definitely, it's definitely worth going in there to see what you feel. There's a lot of different places in the bar that you feel either like maybe something's trying to manifest but couldn't quite, like it didn't have the energy. I don't know. It was an interesting bar.
And that's kind of the overwhelming feeling that I get there, and it's for lack of any other word, it's tired.
Oh, yeah, that might be a good way to describe it. Yeah. So we also did the gun plant this summer, the Pocatello Gun Plant, and that has quite the history, right? Yeah. So historically, if you look up the gun plant, there's a lot on the online about its. It made the weaponry and armament for the large guns on ships for our military, and huge, phenomenally huge building. When you're in that thing and the lights are off, it's cavernous. You can't, it's just enormous. These buildings are enormous inside. Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of activity in the main gun plant. So
they do indeed.
Yes. So we went in there, and the first day that we went in there, we went in during the day. And although I think we felt things, it was more during the evening investigation. I think we're kind of maybe, a lot of people ask, why do you investigate at night? For me, it's simple because it's quieter. You have less traffic, less noise. I think our senses are heightened when it's dark, right? It goes back to the caveman era of we're listening for the predators to come get us. So everything about us it's heightened at night, but it doesn't mean that activity is not happening during the day. It's right. So activity is going to be there day and night. The gun plant had a completely different feel at night as it did during the day, but there was activity during the day. So
I think it boils down to what we first talked about when I was working for Food Service of America, and that was just a building, and I was really working. I think a lot of it is focus. If you're open to things and mm-hmm. are actually looking, you'll see it no matter what time of day it is. But I think that you're absolutely right. At night, there's less things that can catch our attention because it's dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a little unnerving when we finally turned off all of the security lights, because they have the bank of security lights that stay on all the time. And when all of those went off, it was literally so dark in there you couldn't see your feet. It was just dark. It was crazy dark in there. And one of the things that we had to be kind of wary of while we worked in there is they have these two rooms where all of the electricity comes in. They produce a lot of energy, and even getting near them, I was a little queasy because the energy is so off the charts coming out of those rooms.
I could walk in the big generator room, and I could only be in there for a little while. It was overwhelming for me, mm-hmm. And it was almost the same sensation you get when you have that spirit situation, that spidery, crawly feeling that I don't have a name mm-hmm. for. It was almost that same feeling in there, except it was completely overwhelming. It was mm-hmm. It was crazy.
Yeah. So we haven't just started going through all of that, so that the videos for those won't be coming for several months. Honestly, there was so much to review. There's so much to review, and the team doesn't have all of the cameras yet to review because we were in there twice, And that's just a lot of footage with 3 different camera systems, and so there's a bananas amount of stuff to review for that investigation. But we'll have that out sometime next year for people to look at.
I'm excited to see it. I had a couple things happen to me there that I'll never forget. I was over on the other side of that huge kiln that they had, and I heard a guy yelling like he was falling in that back corner. It was a crazy experience for me. I think Bob was with me, and he heard
maybe.
It too.
I think that on the second investigation, we put up some cameras to film that specific area to see if we can catch anything. And there were some experiences back there, definitely. So, definitely a good spot. We have the urban legends around here. We have the tunnel by Century High School where people say your car will be pushed uphill. Okay. We have the park downtown by the post office, and I forget the name of that park, but a lot of people think that there's a little girl that swings down there. I've actually had the police department ask me about that. I've sat out there numerous times. I've never seen the swings go by anything other than wind. That's not to say if there's a haunting. I just haven't seen it. And also Philbin Road. There's allegedly a lady on Philbin Road that wanders the road in a long dress, and she has been seen. I've had a couple of people tell me this. One was my old insurance agent. He stopped to give her a ride, middle of the winter, freezing. He thought, my gosh, this lady's got to be, in dire straits. And then when he stopped to give her a ride, she wasn't there. So we do have a lot of different places around here that have that. We have allegedly the water babies down in the river bottoms. And the river bottoms, for people who don't know, it's a local area on the Indian reservation out here where there's supposedly the cries can be heard from babies that were down there that had drowned. So lots of different things like that. I know with the Indian reservation out there, we have also a lot of Indian lore, for lack of a better term. There's the Green Man on Mount Putnam, who's been seen by people I know and I trust. I've never run across this thing, but I know 4 people who have had personal experiences with him. And it was terrifying to all 4 people. And 3 of the people I would not describe as people who would be terrified by anything they saw in the woods. They all hunt. They spend their whole summers out in the woods, I am not. So there's that. And also in Fort Hall, there's the dog with the human face. That's been seen by numerous people. So
that's
anyway.
An old Native American legend too, I believe.
I think so. Yeah. And just, people know that there's a lot of different legends associated with all kinds of different cultures, right? And because the Shoshone-Bannock tribes are here, we do hear a lot about these legends. So I'm sure there's plenty of other local spots. And we do have our Facebook page out there, Pocatello Paranormal Research. So please, or speaking of spirits, if you hear of different places or if you have ideas for us to investigate, please feel free to drop us a line. One of the places that we didn't really discuss tonight was Cherry Springs, which is out kind of your area, Tim. Cherry Springs and Scout Mountain both have quite a lot of, and that might be one topic or one of our next topics is I will bring up something that was related to me that happened on Scout Mountain and more of Bigfoot UFO and kind of a mix of the two. So there's a lot of different stuff going on out there. Cherry Springs locally is a lot of people have had experiences in Cherry Springs, but they can't pin what it is. I mean, is it a human haunting, Native American haunting? What is it? They never really be able to seem to pin it. A lot of energy down there.
it's been my understanding that it's a lot to do with the water. So the Cherry Springs Spigot is what my grandma always called it. It's when you turn left to get up to Scout Mountain. That's where the spring exits. And as far as I know, no one knows where the water comes from. It hasn't been traced. Someone could definitely prove me wrong on that. But my grandma always loved going up there and getting the water because it was so fresh and clean and it gave her energy, is what she said. So
interesting.
I think it might have a lot to do with the water itself.
Good. Definitely. I know we have a lot of geothermal properties, a lot of geothermal activity out here. So you never know. You never know. Mm-hmm. Well, that's our show for tonight. We really enjoyed discussing these local haunts with you. Again, if you have any ideas of other local places or urban legends that you've heard about Pocatello and the surrounding area, drop us a line on Facebook or our website. We'd love to hear from you. So, Tim, unless there's anything else, I guess we'll call it a wrap.
Sounds exciting to me.
Ha 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 ha!